Now, speaking of martial arts right now, do you think it's being turned more into a business? Because personally, I see it everywhere. It's almost expensive, and you have to pay membership fees and all these things. Um, do you think people are more interested in making money than actually teaching practical self-defense?
Um, I think you see that's a difficult one because I think we've chatted before, and from what I know of it, traditionally, say for instance in China and within the kung fu community, traditionally in China, China's a very commerce-run country. It's always been about money and stuff like that. So it's just always been the norm. You've only got to watch various films. You can watch Ip Man. You can see references to it in a lot of films. It's always been the norm that in China, at least, there's no mystical secret. It is. You don't get taught unless you pay. You pay for what you learn, and I think with things, I don't know, things have gone to America, and I know America's a very commerce-run country as well. So I think they've amped it up a bit with online courses and online black belt and online this and online that. But I mean, can you really blame those people? Well, you can, I guess. But at the end of the day, I suppose they're only doing like an electronic version of what's been going on since the first martial arts school ever opened. And I think along the way there are people who have it in their heart to just run what we call McDojos. You know what I mean by a McDojo, don't you? Yeah, and they've always existed. The people who run popular but crappy dojos for like children always seem to have existed. The unpopular man who teaches a few people, but he's pretty damn good, they've always existed. And then the middlemen have always existed. And then there's obviously the complete fraudsters and fakesters who make up. I mean, the funniest martial art I've ever heard of is I went to a club up here somewhere by me in North Wales, and this I'm sorry, I'm gonna this is the first time I've ever actually dissed someone sort of on the net, but this absolute arsehole made up a martial art he called Jin Kok. He made up a lie that it was from like Taiwan or something like that, and it was just a complete fabrication. And all it was really bad karate and really, really bad jiu-jitsu amalgamated. And I'm going to openly just destroy it. It was shit. It was horrible. I went with a friend. I witnessed one lesson of it, and what really made me angry about it is it was dangerous. The things he was teaching people would get you killed. No lie, it was bad. So he's one of those people. He doesn't do it anymore now. He was found out. But what an arsehole. He's the first person online that I've just called a bloody arsehole. There we go. A royal arsehole.
Well, it's really sad. I mean, I feel more sad for the students of these people. I mean, they're being taught all these wrong techniques, and they're being lied to, saying that, hey, these things will save you in an actual fight, when in fact it'll get them killed instantly.
Yeah. Well, what annoyed me is I was only like 17. This is what pisses me off. I'm not Mr. Brains. I'm just another idiot. I was only 17. And I'd only had the experience in martial arts that I gained up until that point. And I walked in that place, and there were men in their, mid-30s. There were sort of people a couple of guys in their mid-20s, and they were standing there with these Jin Kok black belts on, and it was hot. It was crap. It was, it was just what they were doing just stank. And I remember walking out with my friend and going, how is it that they think that is martial arts? It was just, I don't know. I'm in despair now. You've made me sad.
Oh.
I'm in despair.
Yeah, I mean, since we're on this topic, we often see Aikido. It's we could say it's a really traditional art, and it's not really changed much, ever since it was taught back in the 1930s and stuff. Compared to other arts like judo and karate, where they have gone into more of a sport direction.
Yeah.
Now, personally, I kind of find that most people are teaching Aikido as more as a self-perfection art, And I kind of find that the self-defense part is actually kind of lost from the art right now. And personally, I believe that fighting is actually the root of pretty much all martial arts. I think all martial arts were born out of combat and fighting and warfare. I mean, hence the word martial is over there. What pretty much do you have to say about this? Speaking of Aikido in general.
Well, obviously, not coming from the Aikido community, albeit I have, I have a good friend who's a studied black belt in Japan, from Japan, in the more combative form of Aikido. I forget what it's called. There's there's two different versions.
Yeah, probably Yoshinkan or something.
Yeah. Not coming from the Aikido world, I wouldn't like to speak too much about it, but what I do know of it is that it's morihei ueshiba. He was an old guy when he was teaching it. He was a jiu-jitsu master anyway. He'd gone full circle. He trained as a young man. He trained as an old man, a middle-aged man. He trained as an old man. He'd been strong in his youth. He was old and frail in his old age, as every old person would be. But obviously, he still exhibited traits beyond his years, didn't he? He had great stance and posture, and could channel power through his body. His martial art has evolved. A very beautiful martial art. I've got a lot of respect for Aikido. What I respect a lot about Aikido is the fact that it's resisted the Western urge to kind of just dish out black belts and belts, and you actually have to learn for a certain amount of time. You have to put hours in, like proven hours, evidenced hours before you get each belt. I think that's great because it forces each individual grade to be the level that they should be to get that grade. But and it should. I mean, because at the end of the day, Aikido is all it's all sword based, and a lot of the motions come from sword disarmament moves within Jiu-Jitsu. Studying Jiu-Jitsu, you can see that. It's the way it flows, the way it moves. It's kind of it's made to disarm people who are holding a sword, isn't it? It's perfect for that, and you can see how it's evolved. But yeah, it should be about fighting because, like you say, that's what martial arts should be about. I think it's people who've changed it into a way of life. But then again, it's a continuation of the wisdom of an old master. But obviously, once that master passes away, it'll never be the same as it was. And maybe, yeah, you're right. Maybe now that the master's passed away, it's time for people to bring Aikido back to a bit more of a fighting form, so that there can evolve another master who can take it back up to its brilliance form again. Do you get what I mean? Kind of thing.
Yeah, I really agree with that. But there have been some people like Steven Seagal who actually showed Aikido as a fighting art and not just this movement and something like a dance. And personally, I'm more interested into the fighting part of Aikido rather than learning how to learning it just as an art. Because personally, when you look at the videos of ueshiba, he was throwing people when he was an old man. I believe that the hard training that he did in his early days, the physical training especially, was what led him to be that. But I don't really see much Aikido guys actually doing it. All I see them doing is just the stuff that the founder did in his older days when he was an old man. I believe that if they were to look at what he did in his earlier days, I think Aikido can be seen as an actual fighting art.
No, well, we've had a conversation about this in the past, haven't we? And I agree. I agree with you fully. You know, there's the old saying that you can only after 60 years have you truly studied martial art, because you fought as a young man, you fought as an middle-aged man, and you fought as an old man. And of course, the person you're fighting against is yourself. It's your own aging, but you've been all the opponents you will ever be. That's the saying, isn't it? Because you've been young, you've been middle-aged, you're now old. But no, that's something I've really believed. And within the Bujinkan, when I studied in the Bujinkan, that was one of my biggest gripes, is that everyone, if you guys don't know, Hatsumi is the founder of Bujinkan,
yes,
but
true.
he's old now, ninjutsu, but he's old. And the biggest problem with Bujinkan was that you'd have all these people, middle-aged people or whatever, and they would be like, oh no strength, no, don't do that, no big stances, and they were trying to walk around, and they were trying to do as minimal movements as possible, and they were trying to look exactly like Hatsumi, and I thank God that I had the brain in my head, or I just had my own personal opinion. It might be wrong, or it probably is right, I don't know, but thank God I had the personal opinion to think, hold on a second, I don't want to be like that. Hatsumi is great, he's so technical, but he's like 80 years old or something. You can't fight like an old man when you're young, because what the hell are you going to fight like when you're an old man? You're going to be like jelly. You're just going to be dead and gone. It will not work. I agree with you 100%. You look at all the icons of martial art, and they've all been, when they're young, they've been, well, actually, some of them, to be fair, when they're young, have been quite sickly and ill until they've taken up martial arts. But they've been active, strong, dedicated young people, and I think you're right. That's what we need to inject back into martial arts, and also it's about going back to what I said before. It's a martial artist's responsibility to not only be good at their art, but to make themselves a good martial artist. Bruce Lee used to say it all the time. If you do Aikido, there's no harm in going running as well and getting your running fitness up. There's no harm in going to the gym and building your muscles, because like you said, morihei was a bloody sumo. And these well-recorded stories of him throwing big guys out the ring, and he was very strong, and he practiced eye and head, and it's all really mysterious. And, there's stories of what he could lift, and training with the steel rokushaku Joe staff, There we go. It's 100% agree.
Yeah. Great words from you. Now, do you think as martial artists, do you think it's important for us to have an open mind and not just be stuck into the art in which we're studying?
Going straight on from what we were saying before, I think that's most important. Mentioning old Bruce Lee again, Bruce Lee sort of championed the modern expression of this idea, but I'm sure it's existed before him, because otherwise different styles of martial arts wouldn't exist.
True.
Because everyone would just do exactly what their master taught them. But yeah, no, I believe fully that you have to have your own expression, and you have to have your own development in martial art. You've got to look to progress it beyond its limits. Like for instance, what are the limits of Aikido? Well, the limits of Aikido are, a lot of people say it's not practical.
It has no groundwork.
Yeah, it has no groundwork. Yeah, there's no harm. If you think about it, like we were saying before, if the founder of Aikido was a jiu-jitsu master, if you're studying Aikido, why not go and do some jiu-jitsu lessons and see what the cruder versions of your locks look like?
So pretty much you're saying is that if I'm doing Aikido, if I were to study jiu-jitsu, I'm actually like going back to the past.
Yeah. You're further in touch with the roots of your art than you are if you just stay learning Aikido all the time. You never know. You could learn a move in Jiu-Jitsu that morihei ueshiba himself learnt when he was young, and it might have been the move or the principle, because there's lots of principles within Budo. Fighting martial art is all about principles, because they're the only things that you can apply in real life. And that principle you learn might remind you of a principle that you might take 15 years to learn in Aikido, or never learn the same way. You know, you can't copy. That's always been it's been my gripe about a lot of masters and stuff, is you can never be like, well, they say it about instructors, don't they? They say instructors are the house that you live in, but they're also like the roof over your head. But you know, the roof over your head can be a good thing or a bad thing, because if you outgrow the house, you know,
Yeah,
at some
yes.
point you have to outgrow the house, you know. So I've shacked up the saying, but it's a way of saying your instructor is good for you, but they can also hold you back sometimes from because you know, we want to embody people to be better than instructors. You know, when I see an instructor, I think, wow, that guy's awesome. I want to be better than him. You know, and that's just for my own personal reason. I just think it's my goal to be better than my instructor. And if I can do that, then I've achieved something. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, true. Another thing I'd like to bring up is about testing of our skills. You know, many of the times we just train in a dojo, and you know, I kind of believe that what our teacher teaches us, or sensei or shifu, whatever,
Yeah.
I believe that it works for him because he had his experience, but I don't think it would actually really work for his students unless we actually test it out.
Once again, that's, you know, sort of bleeding into what we were speaking about before, and it's 100% accurate again. You know, everyone is the sum of their experiences. You need to test it out, you know, or at least you need to find out how the instructor knows it, or how he's come across it. It may work for him, it may be his favourite move, but you never know. Your arms might be 6-7 centimeters longer than his, and it could be physically and within the realms of physics of the universe, it might not be the strongest move for you to do. You know, if you're like Shaquille O'Neal, you know, and you're like 7 foot something, you know, and your instructor's showing you some strange like sweeping lock or something like that, you know, your arms just might physically be too big or whatever, or your legs, or so, you know. Yeah, I agree with you. You know, but that's about developing your inner martial artist. You know, it's our goal. We should have goals to test ourselves and to, if we want to try things out. And, you know, not be afraid to have them fail, because then at least you know not to use them.
Now, since you said testing, do you mean us students just going out and picking fights with random people in the street?
No, definitely not. I would never endorse that. Testing, I mean, you know, testing amongst friends, testing in competitions, testing if you want, dive into some, go and join an MMA class for a few weeks. You know, you don't have to stay there. You can just go there. You know, people need to be honest. You know, like you know, you could happily walk into a boxing or MMA class and say, look guys, I do this martial art. I mean, they might look at you a bit funny, but you know, you say, look guys, I do this martial art, I'm not very sure, you know, can I test it out a bit? I mean, it sounds a bit ludicrous being here, but you know, I've done similar things. I've gone into clubs and stuff, and I've said, look, I just want to try this out. I went to a Muay Thai club, and they kept telling me to change my guard, because I do like a traditional style of guard. And I said, well, no, guys, I want to try this guard, you know, just to see if it's any good. And obviously, if I join the club and if I stay here at the Muay Thai, I'll do the Muay Thai guard. I suppose you've got to be careful not to be disrespectful, and you've got to make it clear what you're doing. Do you know what I mean? Because we've all had people turn up at our martial arts clubs, and, you know, they're doing the complete opposite thing. And they won't, you know, the instructor says, no, do this, and they do the opposite, and they're like, well, no, this works better. Well, you see, now that's a different story, because if they haven't let go of what they were doing before, why are they in another club? Do you get what I mean?
True.
Does that make sense? But if they come into that club and said, look, I do jiu-jitsu, I do aikido, I do this, I still want to do it, and I still do it, I just want to try it out here, then I would have thought most clubs would be happy to entertain them, you know.
Great. I'm not really sure, have you heard a term called dojo yaburi?
No, I haven't actually.
Basically it means dojo storming.
What's that?
Basically, you know, just walking in a dojo and challenging people. Do you think, you know, right now it's possible for these things to happen? Because we hear stories like this back then, maybe 50 years ago or 100 years ago, maybe in Japan and stuff like that. But do you think it's possible for it to happen in this 21st century?
I'm sure it does happen quite a lot. I mean, I think it's quite prevalent, again, within China, and probably, you know, even to some extent in Japan, it probably happens. I'd bet more money that it happens in China still, because that's kind of still the culture there, you know. But I guess in the West, I would say it's a no-no. I don't think it's a good idea. Also, you know, possibly you could get yourself into trouble, couldn't you? You know,
true, with the law and lawsuits and all these things.
Well, you could get yourself into trouble with the law. You could get yourself in trouble afterwards. You know, you might win, but you might leave that dojo, and then like you might get attacked by like 5 people who are not too happy about it. Albeit that's probably been the case even in the past. But yeah, no, that like I said, within what we were talking about before, of going to a dojo and making your intentions clear, I think that would be better than dojo yaburi in the modern age, where you just burst in and challenge everyone. I suppose it depends on your character. I would never dream of doing that, because I hope, you know, I don't feel I'm a cocky person, and I try my best not to be arrogant and not to be a dick face. And it just, with me, myself, I couldn't sort of disrespect someone's dojo by doing that to them. You know, even if I thought it was not very good, I would keep it to myself. Other than the one guy I mentioned before, who was actually a fraud, so he deserves to be revealed.
Speaking of this, he just brings up of this bujutsuka called Takeda Sukaku. Basically, he went all around Japan challenging people, and even went to Okinawa and challenged his karate teacher, and basically he never lost a fight. But I'm guessing if he were to do it right now, it would be a totally different case. Lawsuits would be filed against him, he'd probably get arrested.
Yeah, probably. Well, where is this guy? Let's all go and learn from him.
Yeah, he's dead. I mean, he was born around 18 something,
yeah.
You know.
Well, it'd be cool to be able to do that now, but also, you know, realize we're in a different culture, and we're in different parts of the world. You know, there's some parts of the world where that's still acceptable, but I think in the West, especially with the high volume of kids that are in most martial arts clubs today, it wouldn't be practical, would it?
Yeah, true.
And you probably wouldn't find a lot of challenges in a lot of places, to be honest, would you? I'd suggest the best thing to do, if someone wanted to do that in this country or other countries, just head to your local bloody MMA gym, and there'll be hundreds of people who'd be really willing to pound your face in for you.
Alright, so speaking of MMA, right now, if you look at, you know, especially on the net, you find lots of people who often say that, hey, you know, arts and ninjutsu, aikido, you know, it's impractical and it doesn't work in the cage. And then some people are saying that, hey, because these arts are too deadly, you know, to be even used in the cage. What have you to say about that? I mean, being a ninjutsu practitioner.
Yes, well, I suppose technically, really, I'd have to call myself an ex-ninjutsu practitioner now, but But I'm kind of like an unlabeled entity at the moment. But yes, I love that. I actually love that. That's the tale or the legend of the too deadly for the move that's too deadly. I think there's some funny clips about it on YouTube with that Sensei Rick, is it? And he does he says oh, it's like a sketch, and he does he's like, oh, this kick's so deadly, and then he tries it and falls over. I don't know if you're aware of it, but it's on YouTube. It's quite funny. But I don't know. I think there's people have always challenged themselves with combat, even in sort of Chinese martial arts and stuff like that. There's the sanda, the free boxing. But when they've done that, they've always worn protective things like gloves or whatever. I know there's Muay Thai where you have like the rope knuckles and stuff like that. But usually there is a martial aspect of fighting, and then there is like a sports sort of safer aspect of fighting. I do agree there are moves that are deadly, and for that reason, even within the MMA, there are things that are banned. You can't strike people to the back of the head. There's a lot of things that
groin strikes, small joint manipulations, and stuff like this.
Yeah. So to some extent, that's true. It could go on forever, couldn't it? I think you're safer not buying that argument than you are buying it. At the end of the day, they don't work in the cage because they're not made for the cage. End of story, isn't it? True.
I don't think back then when they created these arts, they were like, hey, there's gonna be MMA in the 21st century, and we have to make techniques for that. I don't think they even taught that way.
No. There are moves that you could do that would be very dangerous, and if you were like a specialist in iron fist or iron palm or something like that, or like someone who took his sort of iron fist into the ring was old Masutatsu Oyama in K1 in Japan, and he used to apparently put a lot of people down with one punch and break ribs and this and that and the next thing. So it goes to show that there are moves that are pretty powerful, but it probably would take more than likely it takes a spectacular martial artist to make those death moves happen. And for the majority of us, the other side of that argument is probably the better side, is just to say, they're not made for the cage, they don't work in the cage. The way ninjutsu works and the way Budo works, someone could be the greatest boxer in the world, they could come up to you, you could just grab them by the head, and you could push your fingers into their eyes and just blind them. But anyone could do that, and it's animal, and it's barbaric, but that's the... I'd tell you what's a good example of that is... On that show, do you know there was a show it was like a Big Brother but with MMA? It was like an MMA house where people went in the house and then they trained and then they got a spot at MMA. Do you remember that program?
Yeah, I think I've heard of it.
Yeah, well, there were two of the fighters and they had like a fight outside, and the one guy who was like really good at groundwork jiu-jitsu got this other guy in a lock, and the guy was like, what are you doing that lock outside? And he was trying to do this lock, and it was a proper fight though, and the guy was like, what are you doing? And then he just got fed up, and he picked the guy up, and he just banged his head against the floor 3 times, and the guy split the back of his head open. So it works both ways, doesn't it? Because even MMA fighters know that there's stuff that, even they know that, there's stuff that you just can't get away with outside the cage. And one thing I would say from my experience and sort of from my job, dealing with kind of people out in the public, is that, people might criticize me for this, but out there, when I'm having to deal with someone or they're attacking me, I can tell you there's one place I want to get them, and there's one place I don't want to be, and that's on the ground. So I think you've got to be careful with all this groundwork. It's really good, but let me tell you, the ground is a frightening place. I've had my ankle pop out on me, and I've been on the ground with a dislocated ankle, and the ground is where you die, my friend. So that is a big difference between the cage and real life, because in real life, when you're on the ground, it's game over.
True that, I mean, anyone can, you might be finding the ground with just one person on the street, but hey, out of the blue, a few of his friends might just come and start kicking you in the head.
Yeah. In fact, very recently, there's been a death. Obviously, I can't disclose where, but very recently there's been a death in those similar circumstances. One punch, someone fell to the floor, dead.
Man.
Not from the punch. And I was working on that night, so yeah, the floor's where you don't want to be.
Wow, that's really, really terrifying. Yeah, it's good that you actually share with us lots of your stories and lots of your personal opinions. So tell us more about yourself. What can we expect from you more in the future?
Well, obviously I've been doing the channel and just showing my training. Just all I can say really to the future is, other than the fact that I'm busy with work as we all are, it's just more of the same really. I've been the way I am for years. I'm not planning on changing. I'm not planning on going crazy. Just I enjoy doing my YouTube channel. I enjoy showing conditioning. I'll continue to show conditioning. With regards to my channel, I might be doing a few more reviews of different things with regards to martial arts. And also, there's quite a few people contacting me now who are sending me stuff, probably because of the YouTube channel. Like they send me like some oil or some Joe medicine, different formulas, some supplements and stuff. So there's people now starting to send me supplements and this, that, and the next thing. So, I'm open with it. When they first send it to me, I say to them, look, I'll have a look at it, but, that's all I'll do, sort of thing. And I usually, as soon as I get them, I show them to the people who follow the channel, and I say, well, at some point I'll be looking into seeing how good this is. And I got sent a few books and stuff like that. But yeah, what I can say is more of the same, really, hopefully. I'm kind of the other end of a bit of a health sort of situation. I don't know, my health sort of went down a bit for a bit. Don't know why. I got some bug and it just got me, some stomach thing. But I think I'm the other end of that now. So just doing what everyone else is doing, trying to survive, trying to have a bit of fun, and just more videos of me talking crap for excessive amount of time.
Yeah, I really like what you're doing, and I think there should be more people, they should be doing like what you're doing, because I think these are really hardcore traditional stuff, and as I said, I think it's kind of really being lost in this day and age, and more people like you should just come out and spread the knowledge to the next generation, and then they can pass it on to the next generation, so that you'll never be lost. You'll still be treasured.
Well, yeah, thanks for saying that, buddy. One thing I wish I'd had when I was 17, when I was interested, when I was sort of 15, 16, 17, when I was interested in iron bone training, when I was trying to condition, when I was doing all this, if I'd had someone who was like a bit older than me, had been training, actually training, and not just verbally training for, some good couple of years, had achieved a small amount of success or some results, to which I think I've achieved some. I will only accredit myself a small amount of actual achievement, but I would have loved to have someone, a site like my site, and someone who was just there and who was just freely on YouTube or whatever sharing it, and it wasn't crap, or it wasn't a lie, or it wasn't half of the story. Do you know what I mean? It was just open and honest, and it was just someone saying, look, this is what I do. If you like it, have a look. If you don't. So then, obviously now, a couple of years later, I thought, well, I'll have a go at doing that myself. Then I'll put out a channel where I'm not trying to make myself look good all the time. Not that everyone does, but there's lots of like music. I mean, music is good, but there's lots of videos with all sorts of crazy music, and especially coming out of obviously America.
Yes.
But it's kind of to keep people entertained. But I don't put music because of copyright reasons. But it's kind of just like if you're interested, stay. If you're not, you can go, and we'll not bug each other, sort of thing. Do you know what I mean?
Yes. Oh. So basically, I had a great time talking with you, and I really love your videos. I would really encourage people to watch your YouTube channel, to watch your videos if they're interested in iron fist, iron palm conditioning. I think you really post great tutorials, great lessons over there compared to other people who are just basically just talking and just demonstrating. Along with that, I think you're doing a great job, and I really hope more people would follow and go in the same footsteps as you. And basically, you're not just showing. Of course, I believe that fighting is the root of martial arts, but along with that, it's also about making friends, being respectful, being peaceful, forging friendships, sharing knowledge, and all these things. And I think you're actually really showing that through your videos in your channel.
Oh, thanks a lot, buddy. I appreciate it. That's a good accolade. I like that. It's much easier just to make friends than it is to. Well, actually, it's easy to make enemies. It's difficult to make friends, isn't it? You only have to say one thing to make an enemy. There's too much hatred and shit like that going on already, and we all have to deal with enough crap in our own lives. Why troll each other on the internet and this, that, and that? That's the most pathetic thing in the world, this internet trolling. Just reach out to people, have a chat with them, know not to take yourself too seriously, don't fall into the trap of being overconfident in your own abilities. There's always someone better, isn't there? Thanks a lot. Good talking to you, buddy.
Yeah, good talking to you too. Alright, so good luck for the future, and I think I'm looking forward to seeing lots of your videos.
You will. There will be. I'm sure I can dig out lots more. I'm doing the follow along iron fist training program at the moment, and I'm going to make everyone hate me by probably throwing in iron head and iron stomach. So if anyone wants to check that out, just go to my videos or the Facebook page of the same name, and they can follow along a version of iron fist training that is based from aspects of the 72 secret arts of the Shaolin, albeit I've had to pick different bits because some of the techniques are obviously quite specific, and they rely on gadgets and stuff like that. So at least for the beginning of the program, I just want people to be able to train with a towel, a wall, and the floor, so that everyone can just take part. And slowly we'll introduce more things like maybe a phone book or a big wedge of paper. And then for anyone who's still around in about 6 months' time or whatever, or coming up a year, reintroduce everyone back onto the old steel bags and this, that, and the next thing. Cool.
Well, I'm guessing soon you'll be no longer iron fists. I think it'll be iron body.
Yeah, well, there we go. That's what we want. Iron body. Yeah, we might as well. We're doing the hands, so we might as well do the whole body, mightn't we? There's lots of techniques. There's more than 4 techniques within the 72 secret arts that overlap. There's tortoise back. There's golden bell. There's striking with like a steel mallet or something like that. There's loads of different techniques. They all are basically the same, with little minor alterations in gadgetry, but it's all good.
Yeah, so that's it, guys. Iron Body Martial Arts. Do check out his channel. You'll find great videos. Alright, so I hope you guys enjoy this, and had a great time interviewing you.
Same to you, buddy. You keep well.
Alright.
Thanks a lot for the opportunity to chat to you.
Alright.